All right. So again, welcome. My name is Sarah Lewis. I use she and her pronouns. I'm the Program Director, Performing Arts and Accessibility Coordinator at Mid-Atlantic Arts. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm a white woman with very short brown hair. And today I'm wearing a brown crew neck sweater, and I'm in my home on lands known as Baltimore, Maryland. I want to acknowledge the legacy of the Piscataway and the Susquehannock peoples and the enduring presence of the Piscataway, Lumbee, and Eastern Band of Cherokee community members in Baltimore City today. I'm really happy to welcome you to today's webinar on the Special Presenter Initiatives program. I'm here with my colleague, Sarah Tune, who is the program specialist at Mid-Atlantic Arts. And today we are going to share with you what this program is, who's eligible, how to apply, and how adjudication works. I have about 30 minutes of content to go over with you in this slide deck, and then we'll take a look at the application through Mid-Atlantic Arts online portal. We'll have time for questions at the end of the presentation. And I do want to note that this content is going to be the same as the Special Presenter Initiatives webinar that we held in December of 2022. So if you attended that webinar, you may have already heard some of this information. You're welcome to stay and ask questions again, or you may choose to sign off if you've already been with us in December. I also want to share that this webinar is meant to serve as an overview and a resource. Before applying, do make sure to review the Special Presenter Initiative guidelines at midatlanticarts.org. You can reach out to me with questions about these guidelines anytime. My email is slewis@midatlanticarts.org, and I'll share that a few times throughout this presentation. It's also going in the chat now. For today's webinar, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We do have live captioning for today's event. We have Nick here with us. Thank you, Nick. For those viewing the webinar live, to view live captions, click CC or Live Transcript button and click Show Subtitles. Throughout your Special Presenter Initiatives application process, if you are in need of accommodation, you can contact me anytime at slewis@midatlanticarts.org. You can also give me a call at 410-539-6656, extension 110. All that info is going in the chat again now. Now, as we prepare to learn more about the Special Presenter Initiatives program, I want to share with you a bit about Mid-Atlantic Arts. So Mid-Atlantic Arts supports artists, presenters, and organizations through unique programming, grant support, partnerships, and information sharing. It was created in 1979, and it's aligned with the region's state arts councils and the National Endowment for the Arts. Mid-Atlantic Arts is one of 6 regional arts organizations, and each of these organizations combine federal funding with private support from corporations, foundations, and individuals to nurture diverse artistic expression while connecting people with meaningful artistic experiences within our region and beyond. You can learn more about all of the work that we do at Mid-Atlantic Arts at midatlanticarts.org. And you can learn about all of the regional arts organizations, or RAOs, at the RAO website at usregionalarts.org. Both those links are going in the chat now. Okay, so let's talk about Special Presenter Initiative, which I'll sometimes shorten to the acronym SPI throughout this presentation. So SPI is a presenter-led opportunity for presenters in Delaware, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, West Virginia, and Native nations that share this geography. The program is funded through the NEA's Regional Touring Program, which provides funding to the regional arts organizations to support touring across each RAO's states and regions. And this program is intended to support artist tours to small and mid-sized presenters in the states and jurisdictions that I mentioned, and to support presenters' engagement of artists and communities in each of those states and jurisdictions. We allow organizations to self-define what small to mid-size means. And if you have any questions about how your organization fits into that, you can let me know. Here are some important dates for SPI this year. The final application deadline is coming up on Tuesday, March 14th, 2023. That's 1 month from yesterday if you're watching live. And the project period for Special Presenter Initiative supported projects is July 1st, 2023 through June 30th of 2024. So any project you are proposing for this application should take place during that window of time. I do want to acknowledge some timeline shifts for this program. The most recent Special Presenter Initiative cycle for FY23 was released much later in the calendar year due to the vacancy in my position and for ongoing delays caused by COVID-19. So for FY24, which is the cycle we're talking about today, I've been working to pull back the program timeline earlier in the calendar year and in the booking cycle so that presenters can apply and then hear back about funding sooner. And I really welcome your feedback on this timeline and the evolving shifts to the Special Presenter Initiative program. So in this next section, we're going to talk about Special Presenter Initiatives eligibility, how to determine whether a presenter is eligible to apply, whether an artist or a company is eligible to be presented through this program, and whether the proposed activities between the artist and the presenter are eligible. So let's start with presenter eligibility. As I mentioned, we are requiring that presenters be based in one of these 5 states or jurisdictions, or a native nation that shares the geography of these 5 states or jurisdictions. The organization needs to be designated by the IRS as a 501c3 nonprofit or be a unit of state or local government. The organization needs to demonstrate organizational administrative capacity to follow through with all required project components. That doesn't necessarily mean that they need to have a history of presenting, but they do need to show the organizational capacity for the proposed project. They need to be in good standing with Mid-Atlantic Arts at the time of application, which basically means that we aren't trying to contact you for existing overdue final reports. And they need to not be a state or jurisdictional arts agency. And this last point is most applicable to Puerto Rican presenters managed by the Institute of Puerto Rican Culture. Those organizations are not eligible considering the adjudication role that the agency plays in the selection process for this program. And we'll talk more about that selection process soon. So how are we defining presenter? For this program, Mid-Atlantic Arts defines presenter as an organization that financially compensates an artist or company that is a separate entity from the presenter for performances and engagement activities in the presenter's community. Producing organizations that solely create artistic work or assemble artists to perform are not eligible to apply. So the work that is being presented by the presenter needs to have been developed outside of the presenter's regular flow of work. Again, if you have any questions about whether your organization is a presenter under this definition or whether the project you're proposing is eligible, you can always reach out directly. So what about presenting history? As I mentioned, presenters do not need to have a history of engaging professional touring artists as an ongoing or significant part of their organization's activity to present through Special Presenter Initiatives funding. But organizations without a history of presenting will be asked to describe their administrative plan for engaging the artist within their existing staff structure, among other organizational priorities. This is so that we understand that you can take on the proposed project and support the artist and support your team with this funding if awarded. An eligible presenting organization can apply for a maximum of 2 special presenter initiatives grants in this cycle. So that would be 2 separate proposals for 2 separate engagements with different artists or companies throughout that same project period that I mentioned. So let's talk about what artists can be engaged with support from SPI. Again, this is a presenter-led application, so artists are not eligible to apply directly. But as you think about what artists you will propose to present with support from SPI funding, you can keep the following in mind. The artists can be based from anywhere around the United States or around the world. This is not a roster program, so we don't have a list of vetted artists. We ask you to use your curatorial judgment and decide what artist will be the best fit for your community. They can be based, as this says, anywhere that includes your region, your geographic area. So the artist can be based in the same state as you are located. The only exceptions here are that the artist you select cannot be an artist on a current Performing Arts Global Exchange or Mid-Atlantic Tours roster. That's because we have other funding opportunities through Mid-Atlantic Arts to support those artists. If you have questions about that, don't hesitate to reach out. And I will say, although you can't double dip your support for artists on the Mid-Atlantic Tours roster, I do encourage you to check out that roster and see if any artists on the roster this year are of interest to you as a presenter. I'll say we have some fabulous artists on the roster this season, and many of them still have funding allocation to give out, to recommend to presenters. So please check out the link going in the chat now for more information about that roster. So what is required in terms of programming for each proposal? Here's what we ask of you in order to be eligible for SPI support. We ask that the proposed engagement include at least 1 performance open to the general public and at least 1 community engagement activity. Now, there are lots of ways to define community engagement, and we'll ask you to do that in the application, but think broadly about what this could look like. Both the performance and community engagement activity can be in person or virtual. Also, keep that in mind as you're planning. Your proposed engagement needs to meet the following requirements. It has to take place during the project period, which again is July 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024. The proposed engagement cannot be a fundraising event, although I want to be clear that you can make money on this engagement. You can sell tickets. We'd love for you to do that if that is how you are making your match, which we'll talk about later. But the sole purpose of the event should not be a fundraising event like a gala, for example. We also require that the performance primarily serving a non-public audience cannot serve as your performance open to the general public. It could serve as your community engagement activity. So an example of that would be that a performance only open to a school audience would not qualify as your public performance requirement, but it could be your community engagement. So next, let's talk about grant amounts. In your special presenter initiatives application, you can request up to 50% of the negotiated artist fee for the engagement, but not to exceed $2,000, or if you're based in Puerto Rico or the US Virgin Islands, it not to exceed $5,000 and no less than $750. We do need to see that negotiated artist fee listed in the countersigned agreement with the artist. You can also apply for a presenter capacity support amount of up to $2,000 This is an amount that covers other eligible expenses like your staff time, any rentals you might incur for the project, anything that's directly related to the cost of the project that is not the artist fee could potentially be eligible in this additional eligible amount. All grants from Mid-Atlantic Arts must be matched on a one-to-one basis with non-federal funds, meaning if you were awarded $3,000 from Mid-Atlantic Arts, you would need to match that funding with another $3,000 at least for a total project budget of $6,000. The match could come from ticket sales, as I mentioned, individual donations, foundation fundraising, or any other non-federal funding source. And we'll talk about the budget a little bit more when we look at the application in just a moment, which we are actually going to do now. So I'm going to pause my screen share here and switch over to Smart Simple. This is the homepage for Mid-Atlantic Arts' relatively new portal, which is called Smart Simple. If you applied in the most recent cycle of SPI, your application process will be very similar and you do not need to make a new account. But if you've applied for SPI or any of our programs prior to the most recent cycle, or if you're new to our programs, please keep in mind that your application process is going to be different than it has been in the past, and you will need to make a new account. If you, to apply for special presenter initiatives, so your first step is going to be to visit this website, which is midatlanticarts.smartsimple.com. We'll put that in the chat now. And I'm going to log in through my test account to show you how it looks when you're inside as an applicant. So this is the landing page that you will see when you create your account and log into Smart Simple. When you're in the portal, to start your application, click Funding Opportunities under Available Applications. You'll see that we have 4 funding opportunities available right now, and you can click Apply Now under Special Presenter Initiatives to get started on your SPI application. I already started an application, so I won't click that button, and instead I'm going to go back to the homepage and show you how to see your applications in process. Scroll down to My Applications and click In Progress. You'll see I have 2 applications open now. I'm going to select my Special Presenter Initiatives application and open it up. And now we are inside the application. This is what it looks like when you apply. The first page here, Organization, will auto-populate with organizational information that you will input when you create your Smart Simple account. If you need to edit anything on this page, you can do that by clicking Update Organizational Profile. Under Project, which is the next tab, you'll share basic information about the project you're proposing. An important note here is that each application must have a countersigned agreement with the artist or company you're proposing, and you upload that on this page. That'll go right here under Signed Letter of Agreement. The letter, as well as this other basic program information, is all under this Project tab. I suggest that as you go, you hit Save Draft in purple on the bottom. That might be hidden for you right now if you are also engaging live captions, but you will be able to see it when you are in the application portal yourself. The application does save periodically, but after you complete each tab, it's good practice to save just to make sure. You tab over again to work samples. These should be submitted as URL links. The links can be from any site that provides a URL to view video. They can be password protected, but make sure to include that password in your application. Video of the proposed work is encouraged, but if no video of that work exists, you can provide an alternate work sample that best displays the type of artistry that the proposed artist or company would bring to your community. The work samples can be from any time, acknowledging that a recent work sample may still be challenging to produce due to the ongoing effects of the pandemic. Reviewers will watch 2 minutes of each work sample, so please indicate a 2-minute timestamp for panelists to review if your sample is more than 2 minutes. The narrative questions are next, and these questions are also available to view in a Word and PDF format on Mid-Atlantic Art's website if you'd like to preview them in more detail before you create your account in Smart Simple. I recommend that you draft these narrative questions in another document and copy and paste them into the portal. You can save your work in the portal, as I mentioned, but just in case your internet skips while you're drafting the narrative, it's a good bet to draft them in a separate document and then copy and paste into the portal when you're ready. If you have applied to SPI in the past, you'll see that we have had some updates to the narrative structure for SPI. Rather than 2 long paragraphs, we have broken down these questions into shorter bites. This first question addresses the eligibility requirements that the presenter demonstrates organizational capacity to support the project. If you have at least a 3 or more year history of regularly presenting performing artists, you can check yes and move on. If you don't, another question will be auto-populated here where you can tell us a little bit more about your organizational staffing plan to support the proposed project. The rest of the narrative questions each address one of the assessment criteria, which we'll talk about more shortly when we discuss the application review process. But I encourage you to review each criteria point as you work through these narratives to inform how you structure your answers. So first we ask for your mission statement. Then we ask how the project that you're proposing advances that mission. This will help the reviewers determine the project's mission impact. Next, we'll ask why you want to work with this artist or company, and this will help the reviewers assess the project's artistry along with the work sample submission. The last narrative question here asks about access for the proposed project, and this is how reviewers will assess how accessible your project is. Please think broadly about access when answering this question. We want to know how you'll create access for communities that have been systemically underserved to the arts. Barriers to participation can include, but are certainly not limited to, age, class, disability status, gender, geographic location, race, sexual orientation, or other factors. So in here, we'll want to learn more about how you plan to create access for everyone to this project that you're proposing. Next, we have the Project Activities tab. This is where you give us an overview of all the programmatic components of your proposal. And per the guidelines, make sure to include at least 1 public performance and at least 1 community engagement activity on this list. To add a project activity, click the Enter Project Activities button. You'll see a pop-up window and enter all your activity information into that window. It includes the name of the activity, the location, the date, projected attendance, ticket pricing, if any, and whether this activity is confirmed. When you're ready, you can click Save, and those events will populate on your screen. So now going back to the activities screen, you'll see that here I've entered 2 activities already, performance and school show in this case, and this is how your activities will show up when you're ready to submit them. If you need to delete an activity that you've entered, you can do that by scrolling to the right on your Enter Project Activities window and hitting the X button and then hitting Save. Now we're entering the budget section of the application. Here, you let us know what the budget is for your project. You can use a different, I should say, you may use a different template than this for budgeting for the project internally, but we ask that you please adapt that budget to fit the categories that we've outlined here. So per the guidelines, you can apply for up to 50% of the proposed artist fee or the negotiated artist fee. So you'll put that artist fee, this is the total amount that you're offering to the artist to engage with your community here in this box. And you'll be eligible for 50% of whatever you put in this box. The form will auto-populate with what you're able to apply. We'll look at that in a second. If we look at the other eligible expenses section, this is where you tell us what else you'll be applying for up to $2,000 for other expenses for this project. So anything in these categories, we also have a section for accessibility related expenses relating to the last narrative question, so keep that in mind. Scrolling down to income, you'll put what you think you'll make at the box office and any other earned or contributed income and donations. Under grant requests, you'll see that, again, I had listed $3,000 as the negotiated artist fee, so the form has auto-populated that I am eligible to apply for $1,500. That auto-population will only happen once you hit Save Draft after you've entered the negotiated artist fee, so keep that in mind. You'll enter the request that you'd like to make. So here you'll see that in this application, I requested the maximum that I'm able to in both categories for the fee subsidy amounts as well as the other eligible expenses request. Remember, as you fill out your budget, that all funds from Mid-Atlantic Arts must be matched on a one-to-one basis and that the match cannot come from federal government sources. So as you work on this budget, keep in mind that your total project income is going to need to match your total project expenses, which are listed up here. If you have any questions as you fill out your budget, don't hesitate to reach out. Moving on from budget, we'll go to artist consent. This is where you let us know if you've had the opportunity to discuss the proposed project and the details of this application with the artist or company you plan to present. Of course, you've engaged with them to produce the countersigned letter of agreement, but this section is where you can talk to us about other conversations you've had with the artist to plan the engagement thus far. The next tab for our records will auto-populate with information that you fill out when you complete your profile on Smart Simple. And if you need to update that, you can do it through these buttons on top: update organizational profile or update contact profile. Check that everything looks right and update if need be. And you'll see that you'll also be asked to select your project discipline from this drop-down list on this page. This discipline list comes from the National Standards for the Arts Information Exchange used by the NEA. Finally, and you may need to hit this right arrow to tab all the way over, depending on the size of your screen, the certification page is where you confirm that you comply with all federal statutes and regulations that are listed here. There are links to each one on this page. If you'd like to learn more, make sure to review them and let us know if you have any questions as they apply to your grant or your organization. At the bottom of this page, you list your name, title, phone number, and email. When you've gotten to all through this page and everything is complete, you'll hit submit and the application will be complete. If you are missing anything after hitting submit, the application will auto prompt you to go back and fill it out. If that happens and you're not sure why, you can always reach out to us. So now that we're done taking a look at the application, let's go back to the slide deck and talk about the adjudication process. After you submit your application, staff at Mid-Atlantic Arts will review your application for eligibility issues, and you'll be contacted if we have any questions. Mid-Atlantic Arts then meets with the applicant's state or jurisdictional arts agency to review applications and make recommendations for funding. Mid-Atlantic's Board of Directors gives final approval on funding recommendations, and applicants will be notified of their selection status via email at the end of May 2023. The review criteria for SPI includes grant impact or mission impact, artistry, community benefit, and access. The guidelines have more information on each of these criteria points, and as we talked about in the application, each narrative question is related to one of these criteria points. All criteria have equal weight, and all criteria will be viewed through the lens of Mid-Atlantic Arts mission, vision, and guiding principles. Those are available at midatlanticarts.org. For those viewing live, we'll put the link directly to the page listing the mission, vision, and guiding principles in the chat for reference. I encourage you to review them and to consider how your application, including your narrative and your listed project activities, address each of these criteria. Regarding award notification, as I mentioned, applicants will be notified of the status of their proposals by the end of May 2023. And if awarded, 90% of the award will be made at the start of the grant period, as long as we've received the countersigned grant agreement and you've submitted a countersigned contract with the artist. Here we have our important deadlines listed out once more. The final application deadline is Tuesday, March 14th, 2023, and our project period is July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. I also want to mention a supplemental grant opportunity for presenters who are awarded SPI grants to present an artist or company who identifies as Indigenous. Western Arts Alliance's Advancing Indigenous Performances program provides additional support to SPI grantees to present an artist who self-identifies as Indigenous. Ed from Western Arts Alliance is the point of contact for this program. He's a really terrific resource, and if you have questions, I recommend that you reach out directly to him through the Western Arts Alliance page. You can see the link there. And Sarah T, if you can put that link in the chat as well, that would be great. So this is the last informational page I have about SPI. You can review the SPI guidelines and find the Smart Simple application portal at midatlanticarts.org under the SPI program tab. As you go through the process, do not hesitate to reach out to me with any questions about your program, the eligibility, or other nuances of this program. So with that, I'm going to stop screen sharing and we're going to move on to questions. So as a reminder, please put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we have plenty of time, so I welcome you to ask any questions that you have about the program. And I want to thank you all again for being here and listening through this presentation.
We have a question in the chat.
Great, thank you. Carter, I see your question. Does the countersigned artist contract need to include an agreement to engage in the community outreach activity? How important is artist buy-in? That's a very great question, Carter. Thank you for asking. So at the point of application, you only need to include a countersigned letter of agreement or letter of intent. It does not need to be a fully executed contract, although we will ask you for that fully executed contract prior to awarding your initial 90% grant award if your application is successful. In terms of artist buy-in, yes, your community engagement activity needs to be created in direct dialogue with the artist, along with the performance, just as you would collaborate with the artist on the details of the performance itself, like working on them with them on the rider, or where and when it's going to happen. We also need you to be in dialogue with the artist about the community engagement activity. They need to be aware of it, they need to be participating in it, and it needs to be done jointly through the project. So again, that engagement activity can look like a lot of things. It can be a post-show question and answer session that happens immediately following the public performance. It could be a school show, as I mentioned in the example earlier in the slide deck. It could be an extended workshop and residency with a group of community members from your community who may share an identity affinity, or may work in the same genre of art that the artist you're bringing into your community does. So really be creative and think broadly about this, and ask the artist what it is that they might like to do in your community as well, if you're stuck on developing that. I love to brainstorm stuff like this. So if you want to give me a call and talk through your ideas and try to think about what might be a good fit, I'm happy to do that. You can reach out anytime. And a follow-up question, another question, how specific does the grant match for the funding have to be? So what we'll ask for in your application and also in your final report are for you to articulate where your match is coming from through the template that we've provided. So we aren't going to ask you to provide receipts necessarily. It's not necessarily as detailed as you might find, for example, your state arts agency grant process, reporting process is, just possibly a possible example. But we do need to see that there is a match, because we use that information to report back to our funder, which is the NEA, to share that we met the NEA's requirements for a dollar for dollar match on their funds. So the match has to be there. It can be, as I mentioned, coming from different sources. It can be a mixture of ticket sales, individual donations, other foundation funding that you might receive, as long as it isn't federal funding. So it could even be state arts funding if your state arts funding is not coming from federal dollars. So that's a question you can ask your funder directly if you're not sure whether that funding is federal. You can also ask me, and I can figure out how to figure that out with you. But we'll provide, as you saw in the Smart Simple portal, the template for your budget, and that's where you'll put in those specifics of your match. Let me know if you have follow-up questions about that. I will stay on for a few more minutes to catch any additional questions, but please know that if you are thinking about this webinar and you're like, I should have asked this thing, just give me a call. Oh, and I see we have another question. Great. Is overlap allowed between the Advancing Indigenous Performance Touring Fund and the General Mid-Atlantic Arts Touring roster? So this question is related to a different program from SPI, I believe. You are asking about the Mid-Atlantic Tours roster. And we do have one artist on the Mid-Atlantic Tours roster this year who identifies as Indigenous. That's Martha Redbone. The short answer is that yes, there will be some potential partnership support between AIP, Advancing Indigenous Performances Funds, and presenters who engage Martha Redbone. I'm working out the details with Ed from Western Arts Alliance right now about how much that's going to be and how that process is going to work. But if you have questions, you're welcome to reach out to me and I can bring those questions into my conversations with Ed. So again, I want to say for everyone watching that this question is related to the Mid-Atlantic Tours program, not to the SPI program. Speaking more specifically about how AIP works with special presenter initiatives, if you as the presenter engage any artist who self-identifies as Indigenous that you are interested in bringing into your community, you will fill out the standard special presenter initiatives application. And once I receive that application, if the application is recommended for funding and successfully awarded, we then pass on that information to Western Arts Alliance, and they will be in touch with you about the steps necessary to procure additional support through AIP for that artist. So we are a separate organization, but we are partnering in this way to create additional support opportunities for Indigenous artists. Okay, I will hang out for just another couple of minutes, but feel free to sign off if you are all set, or I welcome your questions. As I was saying before, give me a call anytime if you want to talk through a program that you're thinking about submitting for this project, or if you have any trouble at all with your application, anything from setting up your profile in Smart Simple to working through the narrative questions to negotiating the budget. That's what I'm here for. Please reach out. I also learn from your questions about how to better prepare these info sessions in the future. So everything you ask is welcome and appreciated. All right, it is 11:45 and I think we're gonna go ahead and sign off. I wanna thank everyone again for attending the webinar. I want to thank Nick for providing live captions with us today. And I wanna thank Sarah Tunay for your chat support and general support of this program. As you move through this program process and need anything from Mid-Atlantic Arts, you may very well end up getting supported by Sarah T. And you're lucky if that's the case. So reach out if you have any questions, everybody. Thank you so much again for being here and take care. Best of luck with your application.